Three men stood spread across Main Street, like wolves who'd cornered prey. The afternoon sun hung high and harsh, throwing short shadows across the dust. The old cowboy, gray-haired, weathered hands, simple rancher's clothes, had just stepped out of the general store with a brown paper bag tucked under his arm. Coffee and tobacco. Wednesday supplies. Same as always. The youngest of the three drifters, maybe 22, with a cocky grin splitting his face, called out loud enough for the whole street to hear. He made a crack about the old man's trembling hands, about how slow he shuffled, about how a man that age ought to know better than to be out walking alone. His companions laughed, hard, mean laughter that carried across the silent street. The old cowboy stopped. 15 feet separated them. Behind him, the general store. To his right, a hitching post where a sorrel mare waited, ears flicking nervously. 30 feet away, a barkeeper watched from his window, frozen mid-wipe of a glass. The leader stepped forward, scarred face, built like a bull, wearing his gun low and tied down. Clete Branson, though nobody in Blackstone Valley knew his name yet. He jerked his chin toward the sorrel mare and told the old man they were taking the horse. Payment, he said, for an imagined slight from that morning. Some excuse about being bumped into, about disrespect owed an apology. His voice carried the casual cruelty of a man who'd taken what he wanted before and expected to do so again. The old cowboy's face showed nothing. No fear, no anger, nothing at all. Just those eyes, pale as winter ice, steady and cold. He looked at each of the three men in turn, measuring them the way a carpenter measures wood. Then, slowly, deliberately, he bent and set the bag of coffee and tobacco down in the dust. The paper crinkled. The movement took forever, time stretching elastic and strange. When he straightened, his hands hung loose at his sides. Branson smiled. He started counting. 1. The word hung in the still air. No wind, just dust and silence, and the sorrel mare's nervous breathing. 2. The old cowboy's right hand moved. Not in a draw, in a blur. Motion so fast it seemed impossible from fingers that looked arthritic from a man in his 60s who'd shuffled when he walked. 3 shots cracked the afternoon silence in less than 2 seconds. Sharp, final. The sound of thunder compressed into heartbeats. All 3 drifters collapsed. Different positions, different angles, but the same result. Dead before a single one cleared leather. Their guns remained holstered. The youngest never even touched his. Branson fell with his scarred face hitting the dirt, his count unfinished, his smile erased. The street went silent except for the sorrel mare's nervous whinny and the old man's steady breathing. Smoke from the 3 shots hung visible in the windless air, gray and acrid. The old cowboy holstered his revolver with the same unhurried precision he'd used to set down his purchases. He picked up the bag of coffee and tobacco, brushed dust from the paper, and stepped over the nearest body as if he'd just swatted 3 flies. His boots made soft sounds in the dirt. He walked to his horse, secured the bag to his saddle, and mounted with the creaking stiffness of age. A woman screamed from a doorway somewhere. Townspeople began emerging. Faces in windows, shapes in doorways, all frozen in shock. The old man rode north out of town at an easy walk, straight-backed in the saddle, eyes forward. Behind him, 3 bodies cooled in the street. The barkeeper who'd witnessed everything from his window would later say, voice shaking over whiskey, that he'd been pouring drinks for gunfighters for 30 years and he'd never seen hands move that fast. Some men get slower with age. Others just get more careful about when they're fast. But the real question spreading through Blackstone Valley that afternoon wasn't about speed. It was about who this old cowboy was before he became the quiet man buying coffee on a Wednesday afternoon. What did these 3 drifters awaken? What kind of past hunts a man even into his silver years? My name is Tom Brenner. I'm a telegraph operator for Blackstone Valley, Montana Territory, and I'm telling you this story because I saw the whole thing unfold over 6 days in the autumn of 1884. 6 days that changed everything. The old cowboy's name is Samuel Trent, and for 11 years he'd run a small horse ranch 5 miles north of town. Working horses, mostly, sold them to miners and freight companies. He'd been alone up there since his wife died of pneumonia 7 winters back. Sam kept himself. That's the first thing you need to understand about him. Every Wednesday, he'd ride into town. Same time, same routine, same list of supplies. Coffee, tobacco, sometimes grain or rope or nails. He'd attend church when the circuit preacher came through, sing the hymns in his quiet voice, pay his bills in cash. Never borrowed, never bragged, never started trouble. Fair man, maybe a little cold, but reliable. The town respected him the way you respect a good fence. Sturdy, quiet, does its job. But there was something about Sam that folks whispered about when he wasn't around. The way he could read a man with just a glance, sizing up character and intention faster than seemed natural. The old cavalry saber mounted over his fireplace. Most ranchers didn't keep such things. The scars on his knuckles that looked like they came from something other than ranch work. The way he moved, even at 62, with a precision that spoke of training rather than habit. Nobody ever asked him about his past, though. In the territories, you don't pry. A man's history is his own unless he offers it. In the territories, a man's past is a closed book unless he opens it himself. Sam Trent kept his lock tight. What mattered was that he minded his business and expected others to mind theirs. On the morning of the shooting, he'd ridden into town same as every Wednesday. Same time, same route, same hitching post. He'd been at peace, or as close to it as a man like him gets. The smell of telegraph oil still hung in my office when I pieced together what those 3 dead men really were. It came in clicks and codes, messages traveling across copper wire from towns east and north. The 3 dead men weren't random drifters looking to steal a horse. They were advanced scouts for the Branson gang, 12 hard cases who'd been terrorizing settlements across 3 territories for 2 years. Clete Branson, the scarred brute Sam had killed in the street, was the younger brother of Jake Branson. Jake was the real power, former Confederate guerrilla who'd never stopped fighting even after Appomattox ended the war. Some men put down their guns in 1865. Others just found new targets. The gang's method was simple and brutal as a hammer. They'd ride into a town, identify anyone with property worth taking, send a few men to start trouble, then use the response as excuse to claim self-defense while they robbed, burned, and killed. 2 months before they came to Blackstone Valley, they'd burned out a ranch family near Billings. Father dead, 2 sons dead, mother and daughter missing, never found. Property deed transferred under coerced signature before the bodies were cold. The territorial marshal had warrants for all 12 of them, but no way to catch them. The gang moved fast and knew the country better than any lawman. I'd received the telegraph warning 3 days before the Wednesday shooting. The message was brief, clipped, urgent. Branson gang spotted heading southwest. 12 men, armed and dangerous. Marshal en route, but 2 days behind. I told Sheriff Morrison, who'd posted notices and warned folks to be careful. But nobody expected them to come through Blackstone Valley. We were small, maybe 200 people. There were bigger towns with more to steal, richer targets for men like that. Then Tuesday night, Clete and his 2 men rode in. They drank at the saloon, asked questions about who owned what, made crude remarks to the women serving drinks. The barkeeper said they'd been scouting, taking inventory like wolves counting sheep. Wednesday morning, they'd picked that fight with Sam over nothing. Just bumped into him deliberately and demanded the horse as apology. Provocation. Standard pattern. Now Clete was dead, and I knew exactly what came next. Jake Branson would ride in with the remaining 9 men, and he wouldn't be looking for horses. Jake Branson didn't forgive, didn't forget, and didn't leave survivors. The timeline was simple and terrifying. The gang was likely 1 day behind their scouts, maybe less. They'd arrive expecting to find their advance, men holding the town. Instead, they'd find 3 bodies and a mystery. The real question wasn't whether Jake Branson would come for revenge. It was how soon, and whether Sam Trent would run or stand when 9 killers came calling. That Wednesday evening, I rode out to Sam's ranch, expecting to find him packing to leave the territory. Any sane man would run from 9 killers riding for revenge. The sun was setting when I arrived, throwing long shadows across his barn. I found him inside, lamplight casting gold across his workbench. He was methodically cleaning weapons I'd never seen before. 2 cavalry Colts with worn grips, a Henry rifle with sights adjusted for precision, a sawed-down shotgun, a knife with a leather grip dark from years of handling. Sam didn't look surprised to see me. He just nodded, set down the oilcloth, and gestured toward his cabin. Coffee was already on the stove. He'd been expecting company. We sat across from each other at his rough-hewn table, and for the first time in 11 years, Sam Trent opened that locked book of his past. His voice was clipped, factual, haunted in the spaces between words. Captain Samuel Trent, 3rd U.S. Cavalry, Indian Wars and Border Actions, 1858 to 1873. 15 years of close-quarters combat across territories most men couldn't find on a map. He'd commanded scout units, led night raids into hostile country, survived 3 arrow wounds and 2 bullet wounds. He'd earned a reputation as the most effective and most ruthless cavalry officer in the Montana and Dakota territories. He'd killed more men than he could count, most of them up close, most of them faster and younger than he was now. He'd retired in 1873 because the killing had started to feel like breathing. Natural, easy, necessary as air. He knew if he didn't stop, he'd become the very thing he'd been fighting. Just another man who solved problems with violence, who saw threats everywhere, who couldn't remember what peace felt like. So he'd taken his discharge, found this valley, bought land, married a good woman, and kept his guns oiled but wrapped in cloth. 11 years hoping he'd never need them again. But Jake Branson's gang was coming, Sam said, and they wouldn't stop with him. They'd burn the town looking for him, kill anyone who'd helped him, anyone who'd seen what happened. Make an example that would echo across the territories, a warning to anyone who dared resist them. I asked if he planned to run. Sam's answer was simple, delivered in that same clipped military voice. I'm too old to run and too tired to watch good people die for my mistakes. He had a plan. It required help, but not fighters. Townspeople willing to play specific roles in a trap that would turn Blackstone Valley's Main Street into a killing ground. He needed me to send a specific telegraph message. Needed the barkeeper to do something dangerous from an elevated position. Needed the livery owner to position himself with a rifle where he'd have a clear field of fire. He spread a hand-drawn map across his table, and I leaned in to study it. The map showed Main Street in precise detail. Every building marked. Rooftops, doorways, alley corners, hitching posts. He'd drawn fields of fire in pencil with exact angles noted. Choke points where men would naturally seek cover. Fallback positions. X marks showing where each gang member would die if everything went according to plan. His hands, those scarred, weathered hands, traced the lines with absolute certainty. No hesitation, no doubt. I looked at the map, looked at the old cavalry captain sitting across from me in lamplight, steady hands and ice-cold eyes, and I understood something I should have known all along. Sam Trent had been the most dangerous man in the territory for 11 years. He'd just been choosing not to be. I spent 15 years learning how to kill men in open country, he said quietly. Turns out you don't forget, even when you want to. I agreed to help. So did the barkeeper when Sam visited him that night. So did the livery owner. We had Thursday to prepare because Friday was when they'd come. Friday at dawn, Jake Branson and his remaining 9 men rode into Blackstone Valley from the south. The sun was just breaking the horizon, throwing long shadows across the empty street. They spread into a wide line as they approached Main Street, rifles visible across saddles, every man ready for war. Tom had sent the telegraph Sam requested the day before, a false message to the territorial marshal claiming Sam Trent had fled north, counting on Branson's scouts to intercept it at a relay station they controlled. It bought us 12 hours. The street appeared empty. Shutters closed. Doors barred. No movement except wind pushing dust in lazy spirals. Jake Branson sat his horse in the center of the line. He was bigger than his brother had been, with a beard gone gray and eyes that had seen too much killing to count. His voice carried the flat certainty of a man who'd killed often and would kill again. He called out for Sam Trent, demanded the town produce him by noon or watch the buildings burn. Sam's voice answered from the second-floor window of the hotel. Calm, almost conversational. I'm right here, Branson. You want me? Come take me. What happened next lasted less than 3 minutes, but would be told across the territories for decades. Jake sent 4 men to flank the hotel from the sides while he and 5 others advanced straight up Main Street. Textbook tactics: divide the target's attention, create crossfire, overwhelm through numbers and aggression. The moment they passed the livery stable, Sam fired. One shot from his Henry rifle. The leftmost rider jerked and fell from his saddle, dead before he hit the ground. Before the body settled, the barkeeper rose from behind the saloon's false front and fired his shotgun into the flanking group. 2 men went down, one screaming, one silent. Sam's second shot took another rider center mass. The gang scattered for cover like quail flushed from brush. They dove exactly where Sam had predicted. 2 men, made for the water troughs Tom had moved the night before, solid-looking cover that offered no protection from an elevated angle. Sam dropped them both with precise shots that punched through their backs. Jake and 3 others reached the general store porch, returning fire that splintered the hotel window frame. Wood exploded in sharp fragments. Sam didn't flinch. One gang member broke for the alley, seeking escape. The livery owner, positioned in his hayloft with a clear line of sight, put him down with 1 rifle shot. 5 gang members dead, for pinned behind cover. Sam called down, offering terms. You're done, Branson. Ride out or die here. Jake's response was rifle fire and a shouted order to burn the hotel. One of his men pulled out a torch, lit it with shaking hands, stepped out to throw it. Sam's shot extinguished both the man and the torch together. The body fell. The torch guttered out in the dust. 3 left now. Jake and 2 others, trapped on the general store porch with no good options. They tried rushing the hotel entranced together, probably hoping to get inside, where Sam's rifle would be useless in close quarters. It was a good tactical decision, would have worked against most men. Sam met them coming through the door with both cavalry Colts drawn, 1 in each hand, firing controlled pairs the way he'd been trained 30 years ago. The first man died in the doorway, 2 rounds to the chest before he'd taken a full step inside. The second made it 3 steps in a lobby before Sam put 2 bullets in him. Jake Branson, the Confederate guerrilla who'd terrorized 3 territories, managed to raise his pistol before Sam's final shot ended it. The report echoed in the confined space. Jake fell backward, crashing into a chair that splintered under his weight. The silence afterward was profound. Gun smoke hung thick in the morning light, gray layers drifting through air that suddenly seemed too still. Bodies scattered across Main Street in specific locations, exactly where Sam had predicted they'd fall during our planning session. 9 men who'd ridden and ready for war, now cooling in the dust. Sam emerged onto the street, moving slowly, checking each down man with military precision, making sure. I came out from the telegraph office where I'd been watching. The barkeeper climbed down from his perch behind the false front, legs shaking. The livery owner walked over from his barn, rifle still in hand, face pale. We'd lost no one, wounded no one on our side, ended a terror that had killed dozens across 3 territories. But Sam was bleeding, shoulder grazed where Jake's return fire had caught him. Not deep, but bleeding steady. And his hands were shaking now, not from age, not from the wound, but from the weight of what he'd just done. What he'd hoped 11 years ago he'd never have to do again. 30 years since the cavalry. Hands still remembered what the heart wanted to forget. The territorial marshal arrived Saturday morning, too late to help, but in time to count bodies and take statements. His name was Garrett, and he knew Sam's service record. When he saw the tactical precision of the killing ground, the positions, the fields of fire, the way 9 armed men had been systematically eliminated, he just nodded slowly and asked if Sam needed medical attention. The shoulder wound was superficial. Doc Matthews had already bandaged it. But Marshal Garrett could see deeper damage in Sam's eyes. The look of a man who'd gone somewhere he'd hoped never to return, and now couldn't quite find his way back. I testified to everything. The telegraph intercept, the positioning, the plan, the execution, Marshal Garrett listened, took notes in his careful handwriting, and ruled it self-defense and justified civilian action. He wrote his report and told Sam the territory owed him thanks. Sam said nothing, just stared at a point somewhere past the marshal's shoulder. They buried the Branson gang in the cemetery's far corner, away from decent folks. No individual markers. Just a single wooden post driven into the ground with words burned into the wood. 9 men. 1884. Chose wrong. Short. Final. True. The town wanted to celebrate Sam as a hero. Talk started immediately about throwing him a dinner, maybe even petitioning to name a street after him. Sam declined it all, politely but firmly. On Sunday, he attended church as usual, sat in his regular pew, sang the hymns in his quiet voice. When the circuit preacher, who'd heard what happened and couldn't resist the drama of it, tried to speak about righteous violence and protection of the innocent, Sam stood up and walked out mid-sermon. He wasn't interested in making what he'd done holy. He knew exactly what it was. In the weeks that followed, Sam returned to his routine. Wednesday supply runs. Ranch work. Quiet evenings. But something had shifted in ways that couldn't be mended. The townspeople treated him differently now. Respectful, yes, but also careful. Aware they lived near a man who could orchestrate death with the precision of a clockmaker. They nodded when he passed, but didn't linger to chat. They served him quickly and didn't meet his eyes for long. I noticed Sam rarely made eye contact anymore. Rarely stayed in town longer than absolutely necessary. He'd buy his supplies and leave, no conversation beyond what was required. The peace he'd built over 11 years wasn't destroyed exactly, but it was changed, cracked in places that wouldn't heal. One Wednesday a month later, I watched from my telegraph office window as Sam bought his coffee and tobacco at the general store. Same routine, same purchases. As he packed the supplies into his saddlebag, a young drifter, just a kid, maybe 19, passing through, made a comment about the old man's slow movements. Didn't know who he was talking to. Didn't know the story yet. Sam turned. For just a moment, those ice-cold eyes locked onto the boy. The temperature in the store seemed to drop. Sam didn't say a word. Didn't move his hand toward his gun. Didn't need to. The kid went pale, suddenly understanding he'd made a terrible mistake without knowing how or why. He apologized. Stammered something about meaning no disrespect. Left town within the hour. Sam finished packing his supplies and rode home. And I realized then what Sam's real burden was. It wasn't the 9 men he'd killed to protect the town. It was carrying the capacity to kill 9 more and 9 after that, for however many years he had left. He'd proven he could still be the cavalry captain when needed, but the cost was living with that knowledge every single day. The legend spread across the territories. The old cowboy in Blackstone Valley who'd faced down the Branson gang alone and won. Stories grew in the telling, as stories do. They made Sam larger than life, made the fight more dramatic, made the victory complete. But the legend got it wrong. I knew that then. Know it now. Sam hadn't won. He'd survived, protected the town, done what needed doing. But he'd also opened a door he'd worked 11 years to keep closed, and some doors, once opened, never quite shut again. He'd won the fight, lost something else. That's how it goes when old wolves remember their teeth. I saw Sam ride through town last Wednesday. Same time, same route, heading home with coffee and tobacco in his saddlebag. The old man's hand was steady on the reins, his back straight, his face calm. His eyes were distant, focused on something I couldn't see. He looked like a man at peace. But I knew better.